Breaking news, this is a steal for the New York Islanders as they have locked up Maxim Tsyplakov for the next 2 seasons at a very affordable cap hit, avoiding arbitration, which would have been an absolute disaster for the New York Islanders all around. This is going to be a big win for the team for the next 2 seasons. And I'm really going to explain why on this episode of Islanders Digest, because while I do think there are some fans who are pretty low on Tsyplakov, I think he brings a lot more upside. And while I would have liked to see a third year on this contract, I understand why that likely was not the best for Darsh's long-term goals, and it is a big win for Mathew Darsh to win when it comes to how long he wants to give this player term, which is something that we're seeing early when it comes to Mathew Darsh. Unlike Lou Lamoriello and other GMs in the NHL, he does not budge when it comes to not giving players everything they want if it's not the best fit for what he's trying to build with the Islanders. Before we get into this contract, really quickly, we are on the road to 2,000 subscribers. So if you're an Islander fan, you haven't already subscribed to the channel, be sure to do that. Appreciate all of you who have already subscribed to the channel. It means a lot as we continue to put out Islanders videos every single day. And I was really relieved to see this contract get done. First of all, it's a huge win for the Islanders and Tsyplakov too, to avoid arbitration. Arbitration in the NHL is a really ugly thing. We've seen it ruin so many relationships between teams and players. As a result, most players don't want to go to arbitration either if they can avoid it. And the Islanders and Tsyplakov did that, signing a 2-year contract worth $2.25 million per year. This is lower than what I thought it was going to be. I think the lowest I went in any of my videos was 2.5. So getting this done for 2 years at 2.25, I know in my videos I kind of want to go for that third or maybe even that fourth year, although realistically I was going for the third year. And my reason for that is I think there's a lot of upside with Tsyplakov, and if he shows that upside, I think he's going to be a much more expensive contract at the end of this contract. However, you do have to also consider that there's no guarantee that he hits that upside. And as a fan, I understand it's easier for me to kind of push to sign players longer term that I believe in, knowing that if I'm wrong, I can just admit I'm wrong, and that's the end of the day. With Mathew Darsh, this is his job. This is a really solid contract. He gets a second year out of Tsyplakov, and if he becomes the goal scorer I think he is going to become, this is going to be a great deal on the first and second year of this contract. You got to keep in mind, too, when it comes to these figures, the salary cap is going up. So this $2.25 million is not the same $2.25 million that we saw 10 years ago. And considering that Tsyplakov is at least a third-line player, in my opinion, the worst case playing on the fourth line, I honestly don't even think $2.25 million for a player his age playing on the fourth line is that bad. The worst case, say this does not work at all, you can send Tsyplakov down to the minor, risk losing him in waivers, to be honest. But you send him down, and at worst case, you keep him in the minor leagues, and you cut off $1 million. You're losing $1 million per season. I don't think that is going to happen, but that is just the absolute worst case scenario. So there's really very little risk for the Islanders. They keep Tsyplakov for 2 years rather than 1, which would have been arbitration, also preserving the relationship between the player, so that when this contract ends, there's a much higher chance that these two sides stick together because they're on better terms. And let's talk a little bit about the value the Islanders got in this contract. This is from ScotiaStat, and ScotiaStat has actually been doing a really good job this offseason projecting these contracts. They actually expected Tsyplakov to be getting a little more money than he got from the Islanders, so it's a value deal, even according to their algorithm, which has been very accurate. If anything, some teams have been paying more money for players than they expected in the most part, just due to the salary cap going up. But this just shows there's really good value in this contract, and I think this is going to, even though it's only 2 years, this is going to age really nicely for Mathew Darsh. And again, there's absolutely no risk with this signing. I can't understand why anybody would be upset. Maybe with the term not being too long, but again, the whole issue with the previous regime with the Islanders has been re-signing these depth players too long. And while I love Tsyplakov, I do think he has a ton of potential. He is a depth player for the Islanders, even if he is one of the better depth players, in my opinion, in the league. This is a great signing. This is from Jay Fresh talking about Tsyplakov. And don't let that red projected WAR fool you. Jay Fresh is also very high on this player. He's a player who did a lot of things well according to this model, and really the eye test. You could see Tsyplakov did a lot well. He was very physical. He was strong on the boards. He provided offense even when he was playing on the third and fourth lines. He was solid defensively. However, I think what really wrecked Tsyplakov, other than just not being a great fit on the power play, although in my opinion, I think that was more of a fact this power play was completely incompetent, is that he struggled to finish goals, and I think, as we're going to talk about a little later in this video, I think that's something that he is going to figure out. I honestly think Tsyplakov's a player who was snake bitten. More importantly, though, he took a ton of penalties, and these penalties really kind of blew up his game, at least earlier for the Islanders. In fact, it was never the production that took him off the second line for the Islanders. I think the second line was actually better when Tsyplakov was on it. It was more a punishment because he kept on making some irresponsible plays with the puck, and that's seemed to resolve itself as the year went on, and then just simply taking boneheaded penalties. I'm actually not the type of person to just get annoyed at a player for taking penalties, because there are times where a penalty has to be taken. Most of the times when Tsyplakov would take a penalty, it would be in the middle of the ice when absolutely nothing was happening. He was way too clumsy with his stick, and I think this is something he got better with, and if he does get better with this in future seasons, this is going to be an even better deal for the Islanders. Because I think even at what he did last season, I think $2.3 million is cheap for what he provided for this team, and I think he is going to really level up his game next season. Taking a look at his stats, coming into the NHL, what we actually expected from Tsyplakov is what we didn't get. We expected goal scoring. In the KHL, he had 31 goals in 65 games. The year before that, he'd only had 10. He really took a step up in those 2 seasons. Now, one thing I do want to note is it seems like every single season Tsyplakov has played, he's taken a step up in his development, which leads me to believe, while I don't expect him to develop any new skills, I do think after a year of getting used to the NHL, because you got to keep in mind, the NHL and the KHL, 2 different games, I really expect Tsyplakov to come in on his own more and really be a more balanced player. And where I think a lot of that balance is going to come is the goal scoring. He's a player who's shown he can score 31 goals in the KHL before. Again, the KHL is not an easy level to score goals. There are a lot of criticisms about the physicality in the KHL, things like that. Goal scoring does not come easily in the KHL. So to put up 31, again, I'm not saying I expect Tsyplakov to be some 30 goal scorer in the NHL, but 10 really felt low, especially when you looked at his chances. A lot of times, it really seemed like this player was kind of in his head, unlucky, and when you consider he was really struggling to find a consistent spot in the lineup, it makes sense why all that stuff would kind of prevent him from scoring as many goals as he can. That being said, I think next season, Tsyplakov is almost a lock to score 15 goals, and I would honestly hope / expect for 20 goals. The fact that he scored 25 assists this season, being more assists than he ever had in the KHL, I think actually played a step up in his development, becoming a more balanced offensive player. As a result, I'm really excited to see what Tsyplakov can do. If he can put up 45 points for the Islanders next season and the year after that, this is an absolute steal of a contract. Again, at this rate, Tsyplakov is currently playing third to fourth line minutes, but I think he is a player who can step up, especially if an Anders Lee is traded or even regresses, considering he is 35 years old. Tsyplakov is a player who I think can actually step into that role, as a result have a big boom in his production. While he wouldn't be one of the best players in the top 6 in the NHL, paying a player who has the potential to play in the top 6, I think relatively consistently, under $3 million is great value for the Islanders. And the best part is they have a ton of projected cap space, left. I know $1.6 million doesn't seem like a whole lot when it comes to a professional team's salary cap, but when you consider the Islanders already have a complete roster, meaning this is including 15 forwards, 7 defensemen, 3 goaltenders, this is plenty of money to maneuver with for the season because the Islanders don't have to make any moves. They can make moves, but even then, most of the moves we're expecting the Islanders to make is if they're out of the playoffs, selling players off. So this is only going to get better, and when we talked about Tsyplakov earlier, I was really focused on making sure they kept that salary cap down because there's a chance the Islanders are going to have to pay bonuses. As of right now, the Islanders have $3.5 million in potential bonuses. I think most of them are potential to be earned by Shabanov. So with that being considered, the Islanders do have the money because the way bonuses work is they get paid at the end of the year based on the remaining cap that you didn't spend. And it gets a little complicated. I'm personally a salary cap nerd. Some people tend to not really understand or care about the salary cap. But the way it works is salary cap accrues during the season. So while the Islanders only have $1.6 million right now, at the deadline, that is going to be $7.4 million. And if the Islanders don't add anyone on the deadline, what that basically means is they can use that deadline cap space if it goes to the end of the season and they don't spend it to pay bonuses. That way they don't have an overage like they do this season. This season, the Islanders have a $600,000 salary cap overage. That is due to Tsyplakov hitting on some of his bonuses. This is the perfect situation because there is potential for the Islanders to have a second player who is going to get potential bonuses in Matthew Schaefer, assuming they sign him and he does not go to college and actually plays in the NHL. So that's $7.5 million of deadline cap space, which will likely be more if they trade Lee, if they trade Pajot, will be enough to pay all those bonuses because the maximum amount of bonuses that Schaefer can get is that $3.5 million. That's the grade A bonuses that Shabanov got, and it's going to be the same for Schaefer. So this is all around neat bookkeeping for the Islanders. It's a move that I think has potential to really pay off if Tsyplakov takes a step in his development. And really, there's no negative to this deal. But let me know what you think about this in the comments below. What do you think about Tsyplakov? Do you think I'm being too high on him when I say I think he has the potential to score 20, maybe even 25 goals in the NHL? Do you think he's more of a fourth liner? Even if that's the case, I think this deal is still good for the Islanders. As always, be sure to let me know what you think in the comments below. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. I'm your host. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.